Happy birthday again, everyone. This day of birth of a great master of our Guru is, in an interesting sense, all of our birthday too, the birth of our own higher self, the reason why we were awakened and why we are all here this morning. And it is the dawn of our spiritual awareness and awakening. So it is truly an occasion worth celebrating. I was, just as many of us in this room are, drawn and all over the world, I too was drawn to the spiritual path through the autobiography of a yogi. It's a long story. I won't go into all the details, but I got it when I was very young. I was drawn to the cover of the book and those eyes and the face of Master. I'd heard about it. And I read it many, many years later when I was 22. I just graduated college. I read it immediately. I had a shift in myself. I was spiritually looking in many ways, and I had a sense of recognition, and I wanted to make this my own. I wanted to meditate and practice Kriya Yoga and follow the teachings of Yogananda. I was living in India at that time. I had a very good job. I'd graduated college. I was living independently, and for that age and stage of my life, I was making more than sufficient money, but something was still lacking. I just felt that this was not meant to be my life, and I didn't know what I was looking for, what I wanted, what would make me happy. And it went on for about a couple of years after I graduated college, and suddenly I decided, maybe I should go to the US. It was not something that I deliberated a lot about, and I had a scholarship. I came here to pursue graduate studies. But that was a turning point. I had already taken all the lessons. I had not met other disciples of Yogananda. I had not been part of any organized group. I was part of Self-Realization Fellowship, but not in person in that way while I was living in India. And I came to the US, and it was almost a whim that brought me to my higher education, and I just thought, why not? Let's try it, and maybe I'll figure out what I want to do. And it was actually a rather stressful time of my life. I was trying to pile on a lot of coursework in order to graduate sooner. I realized what kind of debt I had gotten myself into. And so I had to work part-time jobs to make up for my living expenses. And I was really struggling. Until that point, I had actually a fairly regular meditation practice. I used to meditate every morning, and I was very happy about that. I had my altar back home in India, and it all went very well, and suddenly life took a turn, and the first thing that got impacted was my meditation practice. And I remember the last couple of things I packed in my bag when I left India, this is 2010 now, was I had brought from Self-Realization Fellowship a big poster of Last Smile. Many of you know which picture I'm talking about, the last picture taken of Yogananda. It's a very beautiful and powerful picture. And I'd gotten a picture of Babaji posters. So when I got my little apartment, my bedroom here in the US, I was sharing it with somebody else. And in a corner, I didn't have frames or nails or anything. I just got Scotch tape. I put both those posters up. I used to sit in front of it in that corner, and I used to try to meditate, but it sort of lasted for about a couple of weeks. And then, it was a very, very busy and stressful time of my life. I didn't meditate much. But I still remember, this is what I wanted to share and why I wanted to give all of this background, is anytime I would be in my room, I would feel this call. I would feel this call from that spot in my room, just inviting me very, very coaxingly, gently, and I would just feel this yearning because I knew how beautiful it was to have a meditation practice, and I was just guilty and really missing it and wanting to have it. And I would sit there once a week. I don't know how often I did. I would sit for 15, 20 minutes. I would always sit on the floor. I'd not met other disciples. I didn't know what meditation pillows or anything. I would just sit in lotus pose. So by 20 minutes, I was done. My legs were falling asleep, and I just couldn't. And I would just sit there, maybe once a week, once every 10 days. And I continued to do that, although I didn't really have any kind of a consistent practice. But I was trying to stay in touch because I knew how important it was for me. And I remember very clearly, within a few months, as much as I was going through a very, very busy time of my life, I would feel this presence from that picture and from that spot. This kind of a comfort and just this love I was feeling. I would open my eyes after 20 minutes. I would want to sit longer because I would have cleared my time in my calendar to do that. But, because of my body not being able or willing to do that, I would just look into his eyes. I would look at that picture, and I would just feel, is this real? It doesn't look like a picture. I feel he's smiling at me. I feel he's trying to tell me something. Is this real? Am I making this up? And I still remember that spot and that picture and all of it like it was yesterday. And when I would go to bed, there was a strong voice in my head. For a large part of how I move through the world, my left brain is very dominant. There would be this voice, you're making this up, you're projecting. It's a picture. Your mind is projecting these thoughts on this picture. Of course, you want to meditate and you want to make this more real in your life. I couldn't ignore that voice. It was there. It was just doing what it was doing, and I was doing what I was doing. All those voices exist in our heads, and they existed in my head too. I did continue to meditate. I did continue to go to that spot, however often I could. And, there's no end to that story except that I'm standing here on January 5th, 2025, so we kind of know where that story went. But I was thinking about that these last few days, throughout the holiday season. One of the quotes of Yogananda that has been in my mind, and I read that many weeks ago, and it's been in my meditations, is this last thing that he told Dayamata before his passing. In the last few hours, when he was in the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles in 1952, he said, "When I'm gone, only love can take my place." And, it is a beautiful statement. When you sit with it, though, you realize it could mean so many things. And I could go around the room with all of you beautiful souls that are here. Perhaps if you thought about it for a couple of minutes, something might come to you. It might mean something to each person. It might mean something in each given situation. And it was almost like this doorway that was opening up. And it has been in my meditation these past few weeks. Only love can take my place. The love that I feel in my heart, the love I feel from him, the love I feel from my friends. There are so many ways in which all of us that have been walking this path, that have been touched by Yogananda in this life, maybe even if you heard about him in the last few weeks or you're here for the first time, and many of us could share our testimonials of the Guru's presence, of his guiding, living presence in our own lives, ways in which we feel protected, ways in which there have been miracles in our life. I could share my own stories here, but I'm sure all of us have. It is really not personal at all. And we also know that comfort, that assurance, that presence that we feel in our own meditations when we connect with this consciousness. An interesting aspect of that also sort of crossed my mind in the last few days. I was thinking about how this love that I share with Yogananda, the love I offer, one of the ways in which I feel his living presence as that love is the love of all of my Guru Bhais and friends. The connection that we share is so unusual. I often we don't notice how not normal that is. I remember many, many years ago, this was almost 10 years ago, I was walking on the coast somewhere near Pescadero with some of my friends. It was Prashad, myself, Jitendra, many of you in the room. I'm saying these names because many of you know who I'm talking about. And we were all monks at that time. There was probably one more person. And we were wearing yellow clothes because we were monks, but not habits or kurtas or anything. We were just wearing a t-shirt or something. And we were just really happy. We were having a wonderful time, just spending time, by the ocean and by nature and such. And, somebody passed by us, and this random person made some remark. I don't know. He made a remark about the color yellow, but we were just laughing, making a joke. We didn't tell him anything. It was not a serious conversation of any sort. And then he said, you all look almost like brothers. And I thought about it. Then I realized he didn't mean brothers like monks. First I thought, is that what he meant? But we didn't talk about that. And we were not in habits or anything. We were just wearing t-shirts and denims or whatever we were wearing. And then I realized he meant brothers as in siblings. And I didn't notice at all how different we all were. For those of you that don't know, Prashad is this wonderful, great soul in short body. His parents are Chinese, and he looks very Chinese. Jitendra is from the East Coast, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pink-skinned, as Caucasian as one can look. And I look the way I look. And it had never crossed my mind. And for this person, I don't know what he was noticing, what he was commenting on, that we looked like siblings. And that's why he thought to make that comment, I realized later, because it was so unusual for him to watch three men who looked so different act the way we did. But it was a passing conversation. It was not because he was observing us or found something. It was some energy that he was feeling. He may not put it this way. And I thought to myself, this bond that we shared, and this connection and attunement we share with each other is our shared attunement with Yogananda. That bond of love itself was that living presence that was Yogananda living amongst us. I'll share one more story. I don't know if Arivan is here. Oh, there you go, he's standing. Arivan and I were 5 or 6 years ago, we were traveling in the Himalayas, and we went on this beautiful hike. We went to this high-altitude lake, high up above Badrinath, where people say Babaji lives around there. It was a surreal experience. I could share stories all morning about that. I won't. We had a lot of interesting encounters throughout this whole trip, let's just say. It was just so out of this world. And this is not an out-of-the-world story, but I remember at one point, I crossed paths with an Indian man, and he was from the US, actually. He was Indian. And even before I share that, I have to say it was so amusing because we would introduce ourselves often, and he'd be like, I'm Arivan, I live in Delhi. And I'll be like, I'm Saiganesh, I'm from California. And again, he was living in Delhi at that time. And I crossed paths with this Indian man, and we were just talking, and I remember this very clearly. He immediately knew that we both were disciples of Yogananda. And I thought to myself, this was a trail we were hiking for 4 days in the mountains. This was a trail in the middle of nowhere. It's not like a social setting or anything. We were crossing paths with a lot of pilgrims and seekers and sadhus everywhere. And after the conversation was over, I thought to myself, it happens to me often. It happened to me 3 weeks ago on California Avenue because people see my bangle. And immediately they know that you're connected with Yogananda, and they would come talk to you. But then I noticed both of us were wearing jackets. We were hiking high up in the mountains. Our bangles were not visible. And I thought to myself, I did not mention anything to this man that would have given him the impression that I'm a disciple of Yogananda. But somehow, just because perhaps, again, this is just pure guessing at this point, but I really felt it. It was not just who we were and what we looked like, but also just the attunement we shared with each other, that he could somehow feel something. And this man, at least you could say, had a lot of context. Believe it or not, it happened once again during that same trip. But this time it was with somebody who was just a non-English speaker. I don't exactly remember who it was. Some Indian man, some sadhu, or some pilgrim in the mountains. He also just intuitively understood that we were disciples of Yogananda. Then I realized our bangles are not visible. What is it that, what's giving our identity to these people? How do people know we are followers of Yogananda? I haven't yet told you yet. Everybody on that trail was a disciple of Babaji. So just also to everybody in the sense, most of them, everybody was there because this place is associated with Mahavatar Babaji. People believe he lives around this lake. So it's not like spiritual speakers were everywhere. We were a particular brand of Babaji devotees, and people could immediately pick it up. I still don't have a clear answer. All of these are theories at this point. But I think a lot of it has to do with just that expression of attunement, of friendship, of love, harmony that Yogananda brought for all of us. It is so easy for us to not notice sometimes the incredible privilege of this incarnation of this life where we have been fortunate enough to have been exposed to this light, to have come to these teachings, to have known about such a great master, and how unusual, I'm speaking for myself perhaps, it's true for most in this room, our own lives are when we are drawn into this vibration, into this ray of light that Yogananda particularly channeled at this time. This yogi that we're talking about, this saint, this avatar, he was a pure descent of God's consciousness. When I think about that statement, it came to me, he was an incarnation of God's love. He was the human expression of what it meant for God's love to take a form, to walk and talk and be amongst us. And every avatar comes with a particular mission. And Yogananda's mission and his own work at this time had to do with this kind of a bond that we are forming and we are taking into the future. The very last line of the autobiography of a yogi, we talk about the first line, and I'm sure many of you remember the last line too, where Yogananda says, he just ends the book with this line. He says, Lord, he says, you have given this monk a very large family. This is that family. I'm just going to have a sip of water. My throat is not. I was recently in seclusion just for the last 1 week, and I always reach this point on day 3 or day 4 of my seclusion where it feels like this is what it's meant to be. This is what it is. This is what life is. This is perfect. This is what I'm meant to be. Meditate as much as I can, go for walks in nature, eat fruits and veggies, and then why am I doing anything else in my life? Of course, my reservation comes to an end. I'm supposed to have an appointment. I have to drive back to Palo Alto. It just all happens the way it does every year. But this thought always comes around day 4. Like, this is perfect. This is exactly what fits me. This is what I'm meant to be doing in this life. But then, life moves on. But this time, while I had those thoughts in my mind, I had this book, again, from SRF. It was some kind of a book that was published, some magazine or something that was published after Yogananda's passing. And it had so many pictures from the last banquet he hosted at the Biltmore Hotel. And all these pictures of Yogananda, there were 2 dignitaries from India, Binay Sen and Ahuja. They were the consul general and the ambassador from India, the first ambassador from Free India to the US. And Mr. Sen's wife is also seen. I'm sure many of you have seen these pictures. And I've seen all of these pictures. They were not new to me, but there were just many of them. I didn't know how many photographs existed from that one event. And I was looking at each one of those pictures. You hear accounts from the New Path, from Swami Kriyananda and others, how in those last days, how far removed Yogananda was from this plane, how much he was completely identified with the infinite, how his consciousness was soaring. And then you see these pictures, he was just the most gracious host. He's being so kind, the way he greets Mrs. Sen and the way he gives her, he makes way when he's going to give the talk. He gets up from his seat and then he's looking at her with so much love. I was just thinking what it would take for that consciousness, not just to be contained in a human body, but to play that role so gracefully, to walk amongst us, to be with us, to actually to be able to play that part so successfully and so gracefully. That is a gift that he gave us. So there's not a whole lot to say this morning. It is a beautiful time. I invite all of you, as you come up in a brief moment, we will introduce what's going to happen next. We'll have a ceremony where you'll come up and offer a gift to Yogananda. But what I want to share is pause for a moment and look into his eyes and look through that veil, because you will see that what you're looking at is the infinite.
Let's take a moment of silence. We'll have some music now.